Have you ever sat in a room full of people and still felt unseen, like you're living in the middle of your own life, but somehow watching it from the outside? That was Jordan's reality. 35 years old, a good job, a decent reputation, and yet he carried an ache that no one else could see. Every morning he would wake up with this silent thought: what if I missed it? What if the door that was meant for me has already closed? And maybe you've asked the same thing. Maybe your heart has whispered questions in the quiet that you don't dare speak out loud. Why isn't everyone else getting their breakthrough? Why is my life filled with delays, detours, silence, and deeper still? Did I mess up the one shot I had? Jordan wasn't lazy. He wasn't reckless. He had followed every logical step, got the degree, took the job, played it safe. But now, staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m., he didn't feel chosen. He felt forgotten, like God had placed him on hold and walked away. Have you ever been there? You scroll through everyone else's success. You replay conversations, opportunities lost. You measure time in regrets. And slowly a quiet lie creeps in. Maybe what God had for me got handed to someone else? But what if that's not true? What if the delay is not a punishment but preparation? What if that silence is the sound of heaven working in secret? Because here's the mystery most people miss: the door God has for you doesn't open with noise, it opens with alignment, and you're not late, you're being positioned. Jordan didn't know it, but the door he thought he missed hadn't even been built yet. The reason it was taking so long wasn't because it was denied, it was because it was divine. But here's the emotional peak, the tension that turns waiting into warfare. What if in the quiet, in the unseen, your destiny is being stalked by comparison, fear and compromise? What if the danger isn't that God won't open the door, but that you'll quit standing in front of it before it does? This is the warning. The enemy doesn't need to destroy you if he can convince you to settle. That's the trap. To settle for good enough, to force open doors that don't fit, to grab whatever's available instead of waiting for what's anointed. That's why Jordan nearly missed it. He almost said yes to something beneath him just to silence the ache inside him, but something stopped him. One night he opened an old notebook from his 20s, a prayer scribbled in desperation. God, don't let me miss the door you made for me. And that's when it hit him. He hadn't missed it. He was being prepared for it. All those years weren't wasted. They were working. God was building something so specific, so tailored, so sacred that rushing would have ruined it. What Jordan thought was delay was actually design. And when the door opened, it didn't knock. It burst open with such clarity that every question he ever had dissolved in a single moment of peace. That's what I need you to hear today. You're not behind. You're not overlooked. You're not forgotten. You're being forged in silence for a door that no one else can walk through but you. Don't try to steal what was never meant for you. And don't believe that what's meant for you can be stolen, because heaven doesn't run out of options. It runs on timing. And if it's yours, it will find you. So pause and reflect. What doors are you chasing that aren't yours? What blessings have you been begging for that God already said no to because he has a better yes waiting? Keep watching, keep believing, keep becoming, because when it opens, it won't be subtle. It will be the kind of door that shifts your entire atmosphere. If this stirred something in you, don't scroll past. The next part will show you exactly why that delay in your life has been divine all along. Keep listening, because what's coming will explain everything. They told us that the key to success is hustle, that if you just grind hard enough, force the right doors open, push past your limits, then eventually life will reward you. That was the myth handed down to us, wrapped in self-help quotes and sleepless ambition. And most of us believed it. Jacob did. He was the kind of man who measured worth in motion. If he wasn't moving, he felt like he was losing. If he wasn't achieving, he felt invisible. The clock became his enemy. Every birthday, a reminder. Every morning, a quiet accusation. He'd whisper to himself, "You're running out of time." But what if time isn't your enemy at all? What if the race you're running was never assigned to you in the first place? See, Jacob had done everything right. Promotions, networking, sacrifice. He traded dinners for deadlines, traded peace for pressure. But despite all of that, something still felt missing. He stood in the hallway of success, but every door he opened felt like the wrong room. Have you ever felt that way? Like you've poured your entire soul into getting ahead, only to realize you're not even in the right lane? What if the world's definition of progress is the very thing pulling you further from your purpose? Here's the hard truth and the emotional peak I need you to feel in your bones. You can climb the ladder of success, and find out it was leaning against the wrong building. You can chase an identity that looks impressive but leaves you empty. Because striving without alignment isn't strength, it's spiritual exhaustion. And if you're not careful, you'll be applauded for achievements that cost you your calling. This is the myth we must break, that your worth is based on output, that you are only as valuable as your accomplishments, that God's blessing is something you earn by outrunning everyone else. But grace doesn't run on hustle. Favor doesn't obey formulas. Divine doors don't open with force, they open with faith. You are not a machine, you are not behind, and you do not have to prove yourself worthy of what God already wrote your name on. There is a sacred stillness that the world cannot comprehend, and it is in that stillness that destiny is revealed. It's not that motion is wrong, it's that motion without meaning is dangerous, and Jacob had to learn that the hard way. One night, after another long day chasing results, Jacob sat in his car, the engine off the silence loud, and asked himself one question that changed everything. What if I'd been sprinting away from what I was created for? And that's where the shift began. He didn't stop moving, he just changed direction. From striving to surrender, from pressure to peace, from public applause to private alignment. Let this settle in your heart. You are not forgotten because others are being seen. You are not behind because others got there first. You are not disqualified because your pace is different. When God writes your story, there are no accidents, no delays, only design. The world may celebrate speed, but heaven honors alignment. And when your soul syncs with your calling, doors open that no man can shut. So pause. Ask yourself, what have I been chasing that I was never meant to carry? What doors have I been trying to open that were never mine to walk through? What lie have I believed that told me I had to earn what God already gave me in grace? Because the most dangerous myth is this, that your life must look like theirs to be valuable. But what God has for you is sacred, specific, sovereign. It does not require performance, it requires permission. Permission to rest, to realign, to believe again. So if this stirred something in you, keep listening, because the next truth we reveal may be the permission your heart has been waiting for. The door is not ahead of you, it's within you. You've just got to stop running long enough to recognize it. There's a certain kind of fear that doesn't scream, it whispers. It doesn't knock the wind out of you all at once. It lingers quietly in the background, feeding on uncertainty. That's what Emily lived with for years. She was 32, single, working in a marketing job she never dreamed of as a child, and every morning she woke up to a familiar voice inside her head. You're running out of time. It wasn't panic, it wasn't even obvious. It was slow erosion, the kind of fear that makes you believe that if you don't force something to happen soon, life will leave you behind. Have you felt that subtle pressure to do, to prove, to grab, whatever opportunity comes, just so you don't fall into the category of forgotten? For Emily, the pressure reached its peak during a lunch break. She sat alone at the corner table of a small cafe, watching a couple 2 tables over hold hands, laughing about something she couldn't hear. Across from them was a younger man talking excitedly on his phone about a startup that just got funded. And in that moment, she didn't feel invisible, she felt defeated. Why not me? Why not now? But instead of crying, she opened the Notes app on her phone and typed 7 words. I am tired of chasing what's not mine. That's when everything shifted. Here is the truth we don't want to admit. Fear convinces us that if we don't act now, we'll miss everything. But faith knows that what's meant for us will not be rushed or stolen. This is the emotional peak most people ignore. Fear is reactive. It makes you grab things before they're ready. It makes you enter relationships that feel good for a moment but leave you empty for months. It makes you say yes to jobs that pay your bills but bankrupt your soul. Fear is the architect of regret. And if you follow it long enough, you'll find yourself locked in a life that looks full on the outside but feels hollow on the inside. But faith moves different. It waits when the world tells you to rush. It holds steady when emotions scream to panic. It listens deeper. Faith knows that silence doesn't mean absence, it means preparation. It understands that a delay is often heaven's way of refining the blessing before it arrives. And in the case of Emily, that stillness became sacred, because as she stepped back from chasing what wasn't hers, something incredible happened. She started hearing what actually was. Clarity arrived, not in the noise, but in the quiet. A dream she had buried to write, to tell stories that healed, resurfaced. And without trying to control the outcome, she started. One blog post, then another, and then one day an email. A publisher had read her work. They wanted a meeting. No agent, no marketing, no pushing, just alignment. And here's what you need to understand. Faith is not passive. It is not weak. It's not sitting still with your fingers crossed. It's trusting that God's silence is not indifference. It's strategy. That every closed door is calculated. That every no is really a not yet. Fear will always try to convince you that you're falling behind. But how can you fall behind in a race that God designed specifically for you? You are not on the world's timeline. You are on divine appointment. So ask yourself, what decisions in your life were made out of fear, not faith? What have you forced because you were afraid nothing better would come? What have you accepted because you feared you were running out of time? Because here's the warning you need to hear. Anything built on fear must be sustained by fear. But what begins in faith is sustained by favour. That is the difference. And it's a difference that will cost you everything if ignored. Emily's story didn't explode overnight, but it evolved with power and peace because she finally surrendered control. And when you stop forcing doors to open, you start preparing yourself to walk through the right one. The door that God made with your name etched into it, the one that doesn't require begging, manipulating, or breaking yourself to fit in. So no, you don't need to panic, you don't need to compare, you don't need to chase every open door. You need to stand where you are, breathe deep, and ask, am I moving by fear or by faith? Because that answer changes everything. If this spoke to something deep inside, you keep listening. The next chapter will show you exactly how heaven moves behind the scenes when you let go and trust. There's more to come, and it's more beautiful than you can imagine. It was a rainy Tuesday in Brooklyn when Ryan sat on the edge of his bed, the soft hum of the city outside his window barely noticeable beneath the noise in his mind. 38 recently laid off for 3 interviews, with no callback and a rent payment looming like a storm cloud. The silence was louder than any rejection, and yet what haunted him more than uncertainty was the feeling of abandonment. God, are you still with me, or did you clock out when things got quiet? That's a question many of us have asked, even if we're too proud to say it out loud. Because when doors remain shut and answers don't come, it's easy to believe heaven has gone still. But let's go deeper. What if silence isn't absence but strategy? What if what you can't see is more active than what you can? Because here's the mystery most never realize. God does his best work in the unseen. While you're pacing floors and questioning timelines, heaven is writing blueprints behind the curtain. While you're refreshing inboxes and tracking opportunities, God is rerouting people, shifting conversations, aligning moments that don't make sense until they collide. Ryan didn't know it, but while he was doubting a man across the city, a publisher named Marcus was sitting in a cafe scrolling through online articles, looking for fresh voices for a new column. One of Ryan's old blog posts written in frustration a year prior landed in Marcus' feed. It was raw, honest faith filled. The kind of writing that doesn't pretend. Marcus didn't know Ryan, but he bookmarked the page. Later that week he'd reach out, and that one message would change the course of Ryan's story, but not because Ryan chased it, because he stayed faithful while heaven moved. Here is the emotional peak, and if you feel it, lean in. The danger isn't that God is silent. The danger is that you'll disconnect right before the shift happens. You'll stop praying because nothing looks different. You'll stop believing because you can't hear footsteps. But what if everything is happening right now, just not in a room you can see? Yet imagine walking away from the miracle simply because it didn't arrive with noise. That's how most people miss it. Not because God didn't move, but because they gave up too soon. We forget that divine timing is not random, it's precise. It's orchestrated. God isn't improvising, he's engineering the job you haven't heard back from. He's preparing someone to vacate a position, the relationship that didn't work. He's protecting you from a future fight you don't see coming, the rejection that broke your heart. It was a redirection to a purpose more powerful than the one you tried to force. What you can't see is often protecting what you don't yet understand. So let me ask you something personal. What would you do differently today if you actually believed God was working behind the scenes? Would you panic less? Would you trust more? Would you walk with the confidence even in the middle of uncertainty? Because the truth is, God isn't absent. He's just not obligated to report every move. And if you only trust him when you see progress, then it's not trust, it's dependency on proof. So Ryan eventually did meet Marcus. The article got published. It opened a door he didn't know existed. But what mattered more than the opportunity was the lesson. Faith is not about knowing when it will happen. It's about knowing who is holding the pieces. And that belief is what keeps you steady when the world feels unstable. So here's your moment of reflection, not just inspiration, but instruction. Don't just pray when the door opens. Praise while it's still closed. Don't just trust when the opportunity arrives. Trust when the silence stretches. Because God isn't always loud, but he is always loyal. If this story resonated, if you've been waiting, wondering, watching, don't stop now. The next chapter will take you even deeper into the truth that your delay is not a dead end. It's the staging ground for something divine. Keep listening. You're closer than you think. It was a small town in Pennsylvania, the kind of place where everyone knows your business before you've had the chance to figure it out yourself. Sarah, 34, had always been the one with the plan. By 25, she had a master's degree. By 28, she was married. By 30, she thought she'd be a mother. But life, with all its unexpected turns, had other ideas. A sudden divorce, a career stall, a miscarriage, and then the silence. Long, haunting, unrelenting silence, the kind that makes you question whether the detour you're on is even part of the map. She sat alone one morning at the kitchen table, coffee gone cold, email inbox filled with job rejections, and whispered the question that every soul eventually wrestles with. In the dark, did I ruin what God had for me? And maybe you've asked the same. Maybe you're standing in the aftermath of a decision, a mistake, a closed chapter, and you're wondering if there's any way forward from here. You scroll through memories like they're proof you once had momentum. You replay moments you can't undo. You measure time in regrets instead of progress. But what if your worst detour is the exact place where God starts building your greatest purpose? See, most people assume God only works in the straight lines, the clean, the calculated, the planned. But Scripture is filled with people who got there late, took the long way, or walked straight into failure before they ever saw the promise. And that's the emotional peak I need you to feel. Your detour didn't destroy your destiny. It prepared you for it. That pain didn't cancel the promise. It refined the person. What Sarah didn't know was that in the very season she thought was wasted, God was cultivating something sacred. She had started writing journaling, really as a way to process the loss. Her words weren't polished, but they were honest. And that honesty, that raw, cracked, open truth was exactly what someone else needed. A friend read one of her entries and shared it with a group of women online. One post turned into 20. A community was born, and a calling that she never planned began to emerge from the ashes of what she thought was failure. Here's the warning, and it's one you cannot ignore. If you measure your future by your current view, you will abandon the very road God is redeeming. Most people walk away because they think they've gone too far. Of course, they believe detours equal disqualification, but nothing could be further from the truth. God doesn't waste time. He doesn't waste tears, and he certainly doesn't waste the detours that shape your character, strip your pride, and sharpen your discernment. So I'll ask you, what if the closed door wasn't rejection but redirection? What if that heartbreak wasn't punishment but preparation? What if the thing that brought you to your knees was the very thing God used to align your spirit with his plan? Because here's the truth, most won't tell you detours don't delay God, they develop you, and once he has the version of you that's ready, nothing can stop what's coming. Sarah didn't become who she is in spite of the detour. She became who she is because of it. The woman who once measured life in checklists now measures it in impact, in people, in stories, in healing. Her pain didn't define her, but it did direct her, and that's how heaven works. The road you didn't plan becomes the very place where heaven meets earth in your life. So don't count yourself out. Don't delete the journal. Don't walk away just yet. Because you may be standing in what looks like the middle of nowhere, but God is building the road while you walk it. If this chapter spoke to you, if you've ever felt like your story took a turn, you didn't ask for stay with me. What's coming next will show you why the setback wasn't a stop sign. It was an invitation, and you're just getting started. The hardest part of faith isn't believing in miracles. It's waiting for one when nothing seems to move. That's where David found himself. 41 years old, divorced, in between jobs and questioning everything. Not because he didn't believe in God. He did, but because life wasn't matching the promise. He was living in limbo, and it felt like heaven had gone quiet. Each day looked the same. The soft blue glow of the laptop resumed, sent with no reply. The silence that follows every "we've decided to go in another direction." His fridge was full of sticky notes with scripture, but his heart was dry. And one night, while staring at the ceiling, David asked what so many are afraid to admit out loud: God, are you still preparing something for me? Or did I miss it? It's the question that haunts anyone stuck in the in-between. What if the delay means denial? What if what you're waiting for has already passed you by? But what if that's the myth? What if waiting isn't a punishment but preparation? And what if what feels like stillness is actually strategy? Here's what most never see, and it's the emotional peak you must understand. Before this season turns into self-sabotage, God never rushes what he's building to last. That silence you resent, it's not absence, it's alignment. While you're counting days, he's counting layers, building maturity, deepening trust, strengthening identity, because what you're asking for is weighty. And if he gave it to the unprepared version of you, it wouldn't bless you, it would break you. Think about it. Would you give the keys to a high-speed vehicle to someone who hasn't yet learned to steer through a storm? Would you hand a crown to someone who still finds their value in applause? Would you open a door that requires deep character to someone still ruled by comparison and doubt? David didn't know it, but while he sat in silence, his story was gaining structure. His yes was never denied, it was being developed. Because sometimes what God is preparing for you is so big, it requires a slower pace, not to punish, but to preserve. And this is where most people fall, not because they're weak, but because they misread the delay. They stop praying, they stop preparing, they numb the ache with distraction and call it peace. But you must hear this warning. If you treat the waiting room like a dead end, you'll miss the training ground of destiny. The promise won't arrive with a parade. It arrives when you're ready to carry it. David eventually did get the call, a non-profit organisation looking for a director. The role matched his purpose, the timing matched his healing. And when he stepped into it, he didn't walk in as a man desperate for validation. He walked in as a man who had been forged in the quiet, because that's what real preparation does. It makes you ready, not rushed. It gives you depth, not just direction. So here's the reflection you need right now. What are you doing with your waiting? Are you preparing or panicking? Are you worshipping or worrying? Are you building the foundation that will carry the next chapter? Or are you sitting idle, assuming God forgot? Because he didn't forget, he's forming something. And when it arrives, you won't have to force it, it'll fit. The timing will confirm it. The peace will wrap around you like a coat you've worn before. And you'll understand that the version of you standing in that room was not born overnight. It was built in the waiting. If this struck something inside, you don't stop here. What's coming next will reveal the signs that your door is closer than you think. Keep listening, keep watching. You're not being delayed, you're being developed. And what's coming will be worth every second it took. It was just past midnight in a small studio apartment on the edge of downtown Nashville when Michael sat staring at the glow of his phone. 36 years old, business shut down. A breakup still fresh, everything he had worked for gone in less than a year. His vision board was still hanging on the wall, mocking him. Goals with no pathway, dreams now drowned in debt, and it hit him all at once. The feeling of failure, not because he didn't try, but because he did, and still nothing worked. God, he muttered, why would you let it fall apart after I gave it everything? Have you ever been there, given everything you had? The hours, the belief, the prayers, and somehow still ended up watching it unravel in your hands. What's more disorienting than failure? It's failure that followed obedience. You stepped out in faith, and instead of reward, you got resistance. But here's what the world doesn't understand, and what most give up too soon to discover. Not every setback is meant to destroy you. Some are designed to deliver you. This is the emotional peak where many walk away, right when heaven is about to turn the page. You see what Michael couldn't yet see. Was that what felt like the end was only a setup. 2 weeks after he shut the doors to his business, a former client reached out, not for another job, but for a conversation. That call turned into a collaboration. That collaboration became the foundation for something greater, not a rebuild, a redirection, a project that required his exact experience, pain included. So let's stop here and ask the question that matters most. What if what broke you wasn't a punishment but positioning? What if the relationship ended, not because you failed, but because God was clearing the path? What if the job loss wasn't rejection, but protection? What if you were never meant to return to the version of life you lost because it was too small for what's coming? Here's the warning, and you need to hear it clearly. If you treat every loss like the final word, you'll forfeit the setup. Heaven is staging behind your back. Pain is never pointless in the hands of a God who redeems everything. The mistake most people make is rushing to rebuild what God just broke down for their protection. They want the familiar back, but God's not in the business of returning what was. He's in the business of resurrecting what could be. Michael's story didn't climax with a business revival. It evolved into something deeper. He began mentoring others, sharing transparently about his losses. His failure became someone else's map, and slowly what started as brokenness turned into influence. And that's the shift we all need to understand. Sometimes what you think disqualified you is exactly what qualifies you to lead others through. God isn't impressed by your perfection. He's moved by your surrender. So I ask you, are you mourning what God was trying to remove? Are you trying to resurrect what heaven intentionally ended? Are you so focused on the door that closed, you're missing the one opening behind it? Because make no mistake, this is a setup, and if you stop now, you'll never see what the pain was making room for. Your disappointment is not the end of the story. It's the introduction to the part that will make everything make sense. If this spoke to you, if you've been staring at the pieces of something that once made sense, don't stop here. The next part will show you why the breakdown was the beginning of breakthrough. Keep listening. You're about to see the bigger picture. It was late fall in Chicago, cold, grey and unforgiving. The kind of weather that matched how Aaron felt inside. 39. Quiet, disciplined, but tired. Tired of trying to explain himself. Tired of watching others succeed with shortcuts while he chose integrity. Tired of having to prove that his time was coming when everyone around him seemed to be sprinting into theirs. He had a vision, clear, strong, God-given, but no validation. And if you've ever held on to something that no one else can see, you know how heavy that burden feels. Aaron was building a consultancy. No marketing budget, just belief. He'd wait before sunrise, write pitches. No one read. Knock on doors, no one opened, pray prayers that echoed back like silence. He wasn't lazy, he wasn't doubting, he just wasn't seen. And one night, sitting at his desk, lit only by the soft blue of his laptop screen, he whispered, the kind of prayer that doesn't beg but breaks, God, I don't want to chase the spotlight. I want to become someone who doesn't need it. And that's where we stop and ask you something hard. Are you still waiting to be validated by others before you believe what God already told you? Because here's the uncomfortable truth. If you need external applause to trust your internal assignment, you're not ready for what's coming. God doesn't call you to impress. He calls you to prepare, to move in silence, to build in secret, and to trust that when the time is right, the results will speak louder than anything you could say. This is the emotional peak, and you have to feel the weight of it. If you speak too soon, you'll expose what isn't fully formed. If you move for validation, you'll settle for visibility over victory. Aaron didn't chase attention, he chose depth. While others were posting wins, he was mastering skills. While others were flexing results, he was forging character, and eventually the tables turned. A high-profile firm discovered one of his proposals buried deep in an email thread. It wasn't flashy, but it was sharp, proven, strategic, and most importantly, it worked. That single project opened up every door that once ignored him, not because he shouted louder, but because his results were undeniable. And that's the real shift. You don't need to announce your greatness. You need to become undeniable through discipline. Your quiet season is not a punishment, it's a forge, and the longer it takes, the deeper the roots grow. Aaron's breakthrough didn't come because he played the game. It came because he trusted the God who wrote the rules. So let me ask you again, are you still trying to explain what only your fruit is meant to prove? Stop selling the dream and start embodying it. The right people will find you, the right doors will open, the right rooms will call your name, not because you fought for them, but because you were ready when they opened. That's the power of walking by faith. No hype, no hustle, just truth, consistency, and the undeniable fingerprint of divine favor. If that spoke to you, don't move. What's coming next will show you exactly how to turn quiet preparation into public purpose. Keep listening, you're closer than they think. And when your door opens, no one will be able to deny that it was God who did it. The apartment was quiet, almost too quiet. A worn-out couch, a flickering ceiling light, a wall calendar still stuck on March. Claire, 42, sat by the window of her one-bedroom flat in Detroit, staring blankly into the city night. Her life was littered with almost married, almost promoted, almost moved forward. A journal full of goals, unopened applications, unanswered prayers. The clock on the wall ticked, and with every passing second, a voice in her mind whispered, "You missed it. You're too late." But the truth is, she hadn't missed anything. She was just being lied to by her delay. Maybe you know that voice. Maybe you felt that quiet ache in your chest as you scroll past everyone else's milestones, engagements, new homes, new babies, new beginnings, and you silently wonder if you somehow took a wrong turn and got stuck behind. You wonder if the time has passed you by, if your purpose has expired, if your mistakes have erased the calling that once burned so bright inside of you. But let me ask you something real, and I want you to feel the weight of this. Can you really miss what God himself has ordained? Here's where the emotional peak hits, because you've got to confront the lie now, or it will cost you the future. You still have time to build. Delay is not denial, it's development, and what feels behind schedule to you is still right on time in God's hands. We live in a world obsessed with timelines, with proving yourself before 30, with looking successful before you even know who you are. But heaven doesn't run on human clocks. Heaven runs on readiness, and readiness isn't about what you've done, it's about who you've become. Claire thought she missed her moment until a woman from her past sent a message, a stranger now, once a friend. She remembered Claire's compassion, her wisdom, her faith. I think you're the one meant to help lead this. The message said it wasn't flashy, it wasn't loud, but it was specific, it was tailored, it was her door. And when Claire walked through it, she realized something profound. The moment didn't miss her, it waited for her. See, what you don't realize is that every step you've taken, even the ones that felt like failures, were shaping the character required to carry what's coming. The heartbreak that humbled you, the detour that matured you, the silence that taught you to listen. It's all been working together, Scripture says in Romans 8:28. And we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. That doesn't say some things. It says all things, which means your delay isn't wasted, it's woven. So let's get brutally honest. Have you let the illusion of being late stop you from preparing for what's still coming? Are you so focused on what didn't happen that you stop building for what still can? Because here's the warning, and you'd better hold it close. If you stop now, you'll miss what's still moving towards you. The enemy's greatest tactic isn't destruction, it's discouragement. If he can't stop your door, he'll try to convince you it's already closed. But you are not too late. You are not too old. You are not too far behind. You are exactly where God knew you would be at this moment, and the invitation still stands. You haven't missed your moment, you've been maturing into it. Claire isn't exceptional, she's just proof. And so are you. The moment you stop measuring your life by others and start trusting the process meant for you is the moment peace finds its way back into your soul. So here's the invitation. Prepare again. Believe again. Build again. The door you thought you missed may be the one God is still preparing to open in a way so specific, so undeniable. You'll look back and say, it didn't happen late. It happened right on time. Stay with me. What comes next will show you how to recognize the signals that your season is shifting and why your time isn't over. It's just beginning. It happened in a moment no one saw coming. Not with noise, not with confetti, not even with applause. It was quiet, subtle, but it changed everything. 37-year-old James had spent over a decade in the shadows, not because he lacked talent, not because he lacked faith, but because every door he knocked on stayed shut. Music was his life, his call, his offering. He'd pour hours into lyrics, months into melodies, but every label, every studio, every opportunity said the same thing, not what we're looking for. And after a while, he started to wonder if maybe they were right, maybe he missed it, maybe his moment had come and gone. Maybe the dream that once burned so bright was now buried for good. Have you ever felt like that? Like you kept showing up, kept giving, kept believing, but the only sound you got in return was silence? Have you ever watched other people get picked? While you waited quietly in the corner, asking God if he remembered your name? Because here's the truth. Delay creates doubt. And if you don't guard your heart, doubt will turn into despair. And despair whispers lies like God's forgotten you. Your window closed, you missed it. But here's where James' story shifts, and where yours might too. One cold November morning, James gets a phone call from someone he'd never met, a producer. Not just any producer, the one I came across your demo. He said it was buried under a pile of submissions, but something about it, something in it felt different. That track written in pain, sung in tears, laid down in a basement on a borrowed mic, would become the very key that opened the door that every other no had prepared him for. And that's the emotional peak, the breaking point, where something deeper finally breaks through. When the door God opens finally swings wide, it won't look like hustle, it won't feel like pressure, it won't require performance, it'll carry peace. Clarity, weight, that's how you'll know it was him. Not because you forced it, but because no one could take credit for it. And listen carefully. When God opens the door, it will fit so specifically, so precisely, that you'll look back and thank him for every closed one that came before. You see, most people miss it because they try to manufacture what God promised to manifest. They force what they're supposed to prepare for. But doors from God don't respond to striving. They open with alignment. James didn't walk through his door because he was better. He walked through it because he was ready. And readiness is the one thing you can't fake. When your character finally matches your calling, when your depth finally outweighs your desperation, that's when the door opens. Let me ask you, what if the thing you thought you lost was never a delay but divine timing? What if the silence was training? What if the disappointment was protection? What if you're not behind at all, just being positioned for something so specific, so sacred, that rushing it would have ruined it? Because here's the warning, and you need to hear it. If you try to open a door that God hasn't built yet, you won't just delay your purpose. You'll damage yourself in the process. When the door opens prematurely, it crushes what it was meant to carry. But when it opens in divine time, it confirms everything you ever believed in secret. James never had to beg for recognition again. He didn't have to explain why he kept going. His story became the proof, the fruit, the fingerprint. People asked, how did this happen? And all he could say was, God did it, and that's the legacy you want. Not that you made it, but that you waited and God fulfilled what only he could deliver. So if you're still in the hallway, still facing silence, still wondering why the door hasn't opened, don't quit. Don't water down your vision to fit the timelines of men. Don't reduce your pace to match their applause. Don't let a delay distract you from preparation, because when your door opens, it'll open so clearly, so loudly, so undeniably. You'll know it was God, not luck, not chance, not politics, but providence. Keep walking, keep preparing, keep trusting. And when that door opens, because it will walk through it with gratitude, with courage, with the deep knowing that you didn't miss your moment, you matured into it. And what's on the other side will be worth every no, every tear, every night you almost gave up. Stay with me. The next chapter will show you how to sustain what God gives you, so you don't just walk through the door, but you thrive on the other side of it.